Hello everyone, welcome to my channel SW Metro official channel.
Kody Brown, the patriarch of TLC's sister wives, has never been shy about courting controversy, but his latest bombshell confession, that women have actually approached him about becoming new wives, has sent shockwaves through both the Brown family and the fanbase that has followed his polygamous journey for over a decade, because while many assumed that his tumultuous relationships with Christine, Janelle, and Mary, coupled with his once staunch loyalty to Robin, marked the end of his plural marriage lifestyle, Kody himself has now openly admitted that the door may not be fully closed on new additions to the family, and this startling revelation raises countless questions about his motives, his faith, his fragile relationship with Robin, and the future of the Sister Wives franchise itself. Since Kody's public persona has oscillated between a polygamist who once dreamed of building a grand communal lifestyle on Coyote Pass in Flagstaff, Arizona, and a man who in recent years seemed to shrink into a monogamous marriage with Robin, even alienating his other wives and dozens of children in the process. So when he reveals that women, either fans or like-minded believers in polygamy, have expressed interest in marrying him despite his turbulent history, it forces both supporters and critics to re-evaluate whether Kody is truly as isolated as he often appears on screen, or whether he secretly enjoys a level of attention that feeds into his ego and sustains his belief that he is still a desirable patriarchal figure, because after all, when Christine divorced him and remarried David Woolley, and when Janelle chose independence over submission, and when Mary finally walked away after years of estrangement, most fans assumed Kody's days of plural courting were long gone, and that the once bustling Brown family dynamic had forever fractured. But in Kody's world, rooted in a religious philosophy where plural marriage is not just a lifestyle but a spiritual calling, there's always a lingering possibility that he could once again expand his family, though the irony cannot be ignored that at the same time he has repeatedly admitted he struggles to manage the relationships he already had, complaining about lack of respect, loyalty, and obedience from his wives. So if he were to take on new women, would that not simply amplify the chaos, or does Kody believe that fresh wives, untainted by years of resentment and disillusionment, might actually restore the control and adoration he craves? And this is where the story becomes fascinating, because Kody, throughout Sister Wives, has often projected himself as the victim of rebellious wives who undermined his vision, yet by confessing that women are approaching him even now, he essentially reinforces the idea that he still holds a certain charm or magnetism, at least in the eyes of outsiders, which could explain why he is willing to tease the possibility publicly, knowing it will not only provoke Robin but also reignite curiosity among viewers who may have felt the series was running out of narrative fuel after so many divorces. And one has to imagine how Robin, who has long insisted she did not marry Kody to become his favorite or only wife, must be reacting behind closed doors to such a claim, since she has expressed exhaustion, tears, and near despair at the unraveling of the Brown clan, and the thought of new wives entering the picture could either terrify her, fearing the loss of Kody's undivided attention, or paradoxically relieve her of the constant criticism she receives for being the last wife standing, because fans often label her the villain, accusing her of manipulating Kody into forsaking his other wives. But if Kody really is being pursued by potential new sister wives, that undermines the narrative that Robin orchestrated the end of polygamy in their household, suggesting instead that Kody himself may not be ready to let go of the identity he has worn for decades, the identity of a man chosen to lead a large, complicated, plural family. And while it's easy to scoff and argue that no woman would want to join a household rife with dysfunction, reality television has proven that fame, exposure, and the allure of being part of a cultural phenomenon can attract all kinds of attention. So perhaps these women who allegedly approached him are not naive about his flaws, but rather curious about being part of his story. And that raises another angle. Could TLC itself be interested in introducing a new wife as a way to prolong the life of Sister Wives, much like how reality franchises refresh themselves with new cast members? Because if Kody were to entertain courtship again, the show could pivot from chronicling the painful dissolution of his old marriages to following the controversial rebuilding of his polygamous dream, and that would certainly spark debate, viewership, and drama. Yet one cannot ignore the ethical dilemma of whether Kody is capable of treating new wives fairly when his track record shows deep favoritism, authoritarian tendencies, and frequent outbursts. And herein lies the contradiction of his confession. On the one hand, He paints himself as wronged by ex-wives who did not honor their commitments, but on the other hand, he openly admits that women are coming to him, implying he still wields a type of desirability that excuses his past behavior, and fans will naturally wonder whether Kody exaggerated or fabricated these encounters for attention, because while it's plausible that fans might flirt, write letters, or even proposition him out of fascination with polygamy, the notion that he is in high demand stretches credibility, especially considering the way his reputation has been shredded on social media, where hashtags like #TeamChristine and #TeamJanelle dominate discourse. But then again, fame often breeds a peculiar type of following, where people are drawn to notoriety rather than goodness, and Kody may very well have been approached by women who see an opportunity for television fame, financial security, or even just the thrill of being linked to a polarizing figure. So what does this mean for the future? And will Robyn stand by if he seriously considers adding to the family, or will she finally draw her line in the sand, given that she has repeatedly said she did not want to be in a monogamous marriage, but has also confessed that she cannot handle the emotional stress of sharing Kody with others anymore? And what of his children, many of whom are already estranged, some openly hostile toward him? Would they ever accept new sister wives or new siblings, or would this deepen the generational rift and make reconciliation nearly impossible? Because Kody's fractured bonds with his kids remain one of the most painful legacies of his choices, and adding new wives could be interpreted by them as further proof that he prioritizes his ego and romantic adventures over repairing the family he already has, and yet in true Kody fashion, he seems undeterred by public perception, preferring to assert his own narrative of being a man still chosen, still desired, still worthy of respect. And that's the paradox at the core of this bombshell. Is Kody genuinely being pursued by women who admire him, or is he once again crafting a story to elevate himself in the face of humiliating losses, hoping that by suggesting others want him, he can remind both Robyn and his exes that he is not as discarded as they may believe? And ultimately, whether these approaches were serious marriage proposals or fleeting fan interactions, Kody's decision to broadcast them is itself revealing, because it shows that even now, with his family in ruins, he remains deeply invested in projecting an image of himself as a man who cannot be written off, a man whose polygamous saga may not be over, and for better or worse, that alone ensures the saga of sister wives remains as unpredictable, messy, and endlessly debatable as ever. Mary, Janelle, Christine, and Robyn, and the rearing of their 18 children. Yet, in the stark and often painful aftermath of his spiritual unions with Mary, Christine, and Janelle dissolving in quick succession, leaving only his legal wife, Robyn, by his side, Kody's entire philosophical framework seemed to crumble into dust, exposed as a hollow relic of a bygone era in his life. It is within this context of ruin and recalibration that his recent, seemingly offhand bombshell, an admission that women have approached him about becoming his wives, lands not as a triumphant affirmation of his faith, but as a deeply ironic, psychologically complex, and ultimately tragic commentary on the man he has become and the empire he has lost. On the surface, such an admission could be misinterpreted as a victory lap. Here is Kody Brown, publicly embattled, widely criticized for his perceived favoritism and managerial failures within the family, yet claiming that the core tenet of his belief system still holds appeal, that there are those who see in him a worthy patriarch. In the past, this would have been fuel for his considerable ego, proof that his mission was divinely sanctioned and his personal magnetism undimmed. He might have framed these inquiries as a testament to his unwavering commitment to the principle, even in the face of societal scorn. The old Kody, the one with a spring in his step and a new wife on his arm, would have spun this into a narrative of resilience and faith. But the man who admits this today is a different figure altogether, embittered by the departures he frames as betrayals, isolated in the large house he shares with a wife he describes as loyal but melancholic, and grappling with a public perception that has shifted from curious polygamist to flawed and often failed family man. His admission is stripped of any discernible joy or missionary zeal. Instead, it is delivered with a curious mix of bewilderment and defensive pride, less an invitation and more a statement of fact meant to prove a point, that he is still a desirable commodity in the celestial marriage market, even if his earthly track record is in shambles. This bombshell, however, explodes in multiple directions, and its most significant shrapnel lands at the feet of his remaining relationship with Robin. For years, a central critique of the Brown family dynamic has been Kody's overt and overwhelming preference for Robin, the last wife he legally married. The three original wives often spoke of their needs being sidelined, their relationships with Kody atrophying as his time and emotional energy were funneled almost exclusively into his relationship with Robin and their children. The entire premise of their plural life was a balanced, if difficult, effort to love multiple women equally. Kody's failure to do so is the very engine that drove the family apart. Therefore, for him to now entertain, even hypothetically, the idea of bringing a new wife into the fold is the ultimate insult to the women who left because they felt neglected. It suggests that the problem was never the structure of plural marriage itself, but the specific women he was married to. Worse still, it poses a direct challenge to Robin. She entered the family as the young, new wife who supposedly revitalized Kody's commitment to the principle. Now, the specter of a newer, younger wife potentially taking her place introduces a terrifying symmetry. Would history repeat itself? Would Robin become the next Mary, left on the sidelines while Kody pursues a fresh connection? His admission, therefore, is not a strengthening of his current bond but a potential fissure, a reminder that in Kody's world, a woman's position is perpetually precarious. Furthermore, the statement reveals a staggering lack of self-awareness and a fundamental misreading of the very